Victoria Ashford was 3 steps from becoming Mrs. Marcus Holloway when her body decided it had enough. The fainting wasn't from nerves, it was from the cracked rib he'd given her 2 nights before. When she opened her eyes in that back office, makeup smeared and secrets exposed, a stranger named Nathaniel Carver looked at her bruises and said the words that changed everything. "You don't have to do this." What happened next wasn't a rescue, it was a rebellion. If you want to see how a woman destroys her own wedding to save her life, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The cathedral smelled like lilies and old money, 2 things Victoria had learned to associate with suffocation. She stood at the entrance in a dress that cost more than most people's cars, ivory silk that made her look like something worth owning, and tried to remember how to breathe without wincing. The organ swelled, 200 faces turned toward her. She couldn't see Marcus at the altar yet. The distance was too great, the veil too thick, but she could feel him waiting. Patient, certain. He'd always been certain of her. Her father's arm was rigid beneath her hand. Robert Ashford didn't look at her. He hadn't really looked at her in months, not since the company started bleeding money and Marcus Holloway appeared with his checkbook and his Tiaojian. Conditions, expectations, a deal dressed up as a marriage proposal. "Smile," her father muttered through his own fixed grin. Victoria smiled. She'd been doing it for so long she wasn't sure her face remembered any other expression. The processional march pulled her forward. Step, pause. Step, pause. The rhythm felt like a countdown. She focused on the stained glass windows, the afternoon light breaking through them in shards of red and gold, because looking at the guests meant seeing her mother in the front row, rigid with pharmaceutical calm, and her younger sister Claire, whose eyes held something Victoria couldn't name. Pity, maybe. Or relief that it wasn't her. The bruise on Victoria's ribs throbbed with each step. She'd wrapped it tight this morning, layers of medical tape under the corset, under the dress, under the performance. 2 nights ago, Marcus had slammed her into the corner of his dining table during a discussion about the seating chart. Not a fight. Marcus didn't fight. He corrected. The distinction mattered to him. "You're not listening," he'd said, very calm, one hand fisted in her hair. "I need you to listen, Victoria." She'd listened. She'd apologized. She'd iced the bruise in secret and told herself it was wedding stress, that marriage would smooth his edges, that she could manage this. She told herself a lot of things. The altar was close now. She could see Marcus in detail. The sharp cut of his tuxedo, the practiced warmth of his smile, the way his eyes tracked her approach with something that might have looked like love to anyone who didn't know better. His best man, Todd, stood beside him looking vaguely hungover. The officiant, Reverend Patterson, beamed with professional joy. Victoria's heel caught on the train of her dress. She stumbled, just slightly, and her father's grip tightened hard enough to hurt. "Careful," he hissed. The word felt like a threat. She straightened, kept walking. The music swelled. Marcus's smile widened. 3 more steps. 2. The pain in her ribs spiked sharp enough to gray her vision. 1 step. Her lungs forgot how to work. The cathedral tilted, slow and then fast, and the last thing she registered before the floor came up to meet her was the collective gasp of 200 people and the distant clinical thought, "At least I don't have to finish walking." Gas. She woke to the smell of old books and furniture polish. Not the cathedral. Somewhere else. Smaller, quieter. Victoria's eyes opened to an unfamiliar ceiling, dark wood beams, expensive and understated. She was lying on a leather couch in what looked like a private office. The wedding dress was still on, though someone had loosened the corset enough for her to breathe. The veil was gone. Her carefully applied makeup, 3 hours of airbrush and contouring, felt smeared and wrong on her face. "Easy, don't sit up too fast." The voice came from her left. Male, low, unfamiliar. Victoria turned her head and found a man sitting in the chair across from her, watching her with the kind of attention that made her skin prickle with awareness. He wasn't in wedding attire, just dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. Late 30s, maybe. Sharp features, dark hair, eyes that looked gray in the dim light. There was something precise about him, controlled, like he'd thought through every possible scenario before sitting down. Where? Her throat was dry. "Where am I?" "Church office. You fainted. Hit the floor pretty hard." He didn't move, didn't offer water or comfort, just kept watching her with that steady, unnerving focus. Your fiancé wanted to call an ambulance. I convinced him a quiet room and some privacy would be better. Fiancé. The word made her stomach turn. Who are you? Nathaniel Carver. He said it like she should know the name. When her expression stayed blank, something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe? Or disappointment. I'm a friend of the groom's family, distant friend. We don't keep in close touch. The way he said it suggested there was a reason for the distance. Victoria pushed herself upright, ignoring the protest from her ribs. The room spun once, then settled. Through the closed door, she could hear muffled voices, movement, the kind of controlled chaos that came from a derailed event and 200 confused guests. I need to... She stopped. Need to what? Go back out there? Finish it? The thought made her want to lie back down and never get up. Your makeup's smeared, Nathaniel said. Quiet. Matter of fact. Victoria's hand went to her face automatically. Her fingers came away streaked with foundation, and she realized with cold, creeping horror exactly what that meant. The coverage she'd applied so carefully to her left cheekbone, the bruise Marcus had left 3 days ago during a conversation about her photography hobby, "You won't have time for that after we're married, Victoria," was probably visible now. And this stranger, this man she'd never met, was sitting across from her like he'd already seen it. There's a mirror on the wall. Nathaniel gestured to his right without taking his eyes off her. If you want to check. She didn't want to check. She wanted to rewind time by 2 hours, or 2 months, or 2 years, back to before Marcus, before the company collapsed, before her father looked at her like an asset to be liquidated. But she stood anyway, unsteady in heels that suddenly felt like weapons, and crossed to the small mirror hanging beside a bookshelf. The woman looking back at her was a stranger, pale, hollow-eyed. The airbrushed perfection of the ceremony was gone, leaving behind smeared mascara, streaked foundation, and yes, there, on her left cheekbone, spreading toward her temple, the faded yellow-green of a healing bruise. She'd gotten good at hiding them. Makeup, angles, lighting, the right smile at the right moment. But fainting hadn't been part of the plan, and neither had waking up exposed in front of someone whose eyes felt like they could catalog every lie she'd ever told. You should sit down, Nathaniel said behind her, still calm. Still watching. Victoria turned to face him instead. The dress rustled, heavy and ridiculous, a costume for a role she was suddenly desperate to abandon. How bad does it look? Her voice came out steadier than she expected. Bad enough. I fell. Sure. I'm clumsy. I bruise easily. Victoria. He said her name like he'd known her for years instead of minutes. You can lie to them. Don't lie to me. The air went out of the room. She stared at him, this stranger with his rolled sleeves and his careful distance, and felt something crack in her chest that had nothing to do with broken ribs. You don't know anything about me. I know Marcus Holloway. Nathaniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and the casual posture didn't match the intensity in his eyes. I know what he does when he thinks no one's watching. I know what he is. Then you know more than you should. Victoria moved back toward the couch, but didn't sit. Standing felt safer, even though her legs were shaking. And you should probably keep it to yourself. Should I? It wasn't a question. Yes. Even though you're about to marry him, especially because I'm about to marry him. Nathaniel studied her for a long moment. That bruise on your face is 3, maybe 4 days old. There are probably others. Your left arm moves carefully, like something hurts when you extend it. And you fainted in the middle of your own wedding, which suggests your body is trying to tell you something your brain won't admit. Victoria's hands clenched in the silk of her dress. You're very observant. I pay attention. To other people's business? To things that matter. This doesn't matter to you, doesn't it? He stood then, and she realized he was taller than she'd thought, broad-shouldered in a way that should have felt threatening, but somehow didn't. He stayed on his side of the room, careful not to crowd her. Let me tell you what's happening out there right now. Your father is reassuring guests that you're fine, just overwhelmed by emotion. Your mother is taking something for her nerves. Marcus is playing the concerned fiancé beautifully. He's got your sister comforting him, which is a nice touch. And in about 5 minutes, someone's going to come through that door and tell you it's time to finish what you started. Everything he said was probably true. Victoria could picture it exactly. The performance, the management, the way her family would smooth this over because the alternative was unthinkable. So? She lifted her chin. That's what's supposed to happen. Is it what you want to happen? What I want doesn't... She stopped, caught herself. It doesn't matter what I want. Why not? Because. The word came out sharper than she intended. Because my father's company is 6 months from bankruptcy. Because Marcus is the only investor willing to keep it afloat. Because my family needs this. Because I already said yes. Because you're afraid of what he'll do if you say no. The truth of it hit her like cold water. Victoria looked away, focusing on a painting on the wall, something abstract, meaningless. You need to leave. Probably. Now. In a minute. Nathaniel moved closer, just one step, and she forced herself not to retreat. I need you to understand something first. I don't need to understand anything from you. Marcus Holloway is not a good man. His voice dropped, quiet and absolute. I've known him for 15 years. I've watched him hurt people. Business partners, employees, women he dated before you. He's careful about it, strategic. He chooses people who won't fight back or can't afford to, and he's very good at making them believe they deserved it. Victoria's throat closed. Stop. He will hurt you worse after you're married. Not better. Not less. Worse. Because you'll be his then, legally and publicly, and he'll have even less reason to hold back. You don't know that? Yes, I do. Something hard passed through his expression. I've seen the aftermath before. The door handle rattled. Victoria's heart slammed against her ribs. She turned toward the sound just as the door opened, and her father stepped in, followed immediately by Marcus. Robert Ashford looked harried, his careful composure fraying at the edges. Victoria, thank heaven, we were getting worried. Marcus moved past him, crossing straight to Victoria with the kind of concern that would have looked perfect to anyone who didn't know better. Sweetheart, are you okay? You scared me to death out there. He reached for her hands. Victoria let him take them, felt his fingers wrap around hers, warm, firm, possessive. I'm fine, she heard herself say. I just got lightheaded. The corset was too tight, I think. We should get you checked out properly. Marcus's thumb stroked across her knuckles, a gesture that might have seemed tender if she couldn't feel how tightly he was gripping. Make sure you're really all right. I'm fine, she repeated. Really? Her father cleared his throat. The guests are waiting. If you're feeling up to it, she needs a minute. Nathaniel's voice cut through the room, calm and immovable. She just regained consciousness. Pushing her back out there isn't a good idea. Marcus's expression cooled as he seemed to notice Nathaniel for the first time. I'm sorry, who are you? Nathaniel Carver? I don't remember you on the guest list. I'm not. I'm here as a courtesy to your family. Nathaniel's tone stayed pleasant, but something in his posture had shifted, become more deliberate. We've met before, Marcus, 5 years ago, your father's retirement party. Recognition flickered across Marcus's face, followed quickly by something else. Wariness, maybe, or calculation. Right. I remember now. He turned his attention back to Victoria, effectively dismissing Nathaniel. Come on, sweetheart. Let's get you back to the dressing room. You can fix your makeup, catch your breath properly. He tugged on her hands, gentle but insistent. Victoria didn't move. Marcus frowned. Victoria? She was looking at Nathaniel. He stood there, quiet and steady, and his eyes asked her a question that had nothing to do with anyone else in the room. What do you want? I need a minute, she said. Alone. Sweetheart? Alone. She pulled her hands free from Marcus's grip. The movement made her ribs scream, but she kept her expression smooth. Please, I just need a minute to collect myself. Her father made a frustrated sound. Victoria, we have 200 people. They can wait. She said it firmly enough that Robert Ashford actually stopped talking. It might have been the first time in her life she'd managed that. 5 minutes. That's all I need. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he manufactured a smile. Of course. Whatever you need. He leaned in to kiss her forehead, a performance for the others, and whispered against her skin, quiet enough that only she could hear. "Don't make me look foolish, Victoria. We'll talk about this later." The promise in those words made her skin crawl. Then he straightened, still smiling, and gestured for her father to leave. Robert hesitated, looking between his daughter and the door like he wasn't sure which obligation to prioritize, but eventually he followed Marcus out. The door closed. Nathaniel remained. "You should go too," Victoria said. "Should I?" "I said alone. You said you needed a minute. You didn't specify from whom." He moved back to the chair and sat, relaxed and unmovable. "Besides, if I leave, you'll pull yourself together, fix your makeup, and walk back out there to finish making the biggest mistake of your life. I'd rather not let that happen." "It's not your choice." "No, it's yours." He leaned back, watching her. "So make it." Victoria laughed, sharp and bitter. "You think I have choices? Everyone has choices." Spoken like someone who's never been trapped. "I've been trapped." His voice went flat, distant. "Different circumstances. Same feeling. I know what it's like to think you're out of options." "And how did you get out?" "I made a hard decision." He paused. "And then I dealt with the consequences." "Easy for you to say." "It wasn't easy. It was necessary." Nathaniel stood again, and this time he crossed the space between them, stopping just close enough that she had to look up to meet his eyes. "Victoria, listen to me. In about 2 minutes, someone else is going to knock on that door. They're going to tell you it's time. And you're going to have to decide right then, do you walk back out there and marry a man who hurts you? Or do you choose something else? There is no something else. There's always something else. You don't understand? Then explain it to me." His voice stayed level, patient. "Tell me what happens if you walk away right now. Worst case scenario, go." Victoria opened her mouth, closed it. The answer should have been simple, but actually speaking, it felt impossible. "My father's company collapses," she finally said. "Marcus pulls his investment. 40 years of business, gone. 200 employees lose their jobs. My father loses everything he built. My family, your family put this on you." Nathaniel said it without malice, just fact. "They made you responsible for their survival. That's not love, Victoria. That's sacrifice. And not the noble kind. They need me. They need Marcus's money. There's a difference. It's the same thing." "Is it?" He tilted his head slightly. "Because from where I'm standing, what they need is someone willing to sell you to the highest bidder, and what you need is a way out before he kills you." The word hung in the air between them. Kills. He wouldn't, but she couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't make herself believe it. "Maybe not intentionally," Nathaniel said quietly, "but eventually, one of his corrections will go too far. One cracked rib that punctures a lung, one shove that sends you downstairs, one moment where he miscalculates his own strength or his own anger, and then it won't matter what he intended, will it?" Victoria's hands were shaking. She pressed them against the silk of her dress, trying to still them. "What do you want from me?" Her voice came out small. "Why do you even care?" "Because I know what it looks like when someone's about to disappear into a bad situation. And I know what it sounds like when they're trying to convince themselves they'll be fine." He stepped back, giving her space. "I'm not here to rescue you. You don't need rescuing. You need permission." "Permission for what?" "To choose yourself." A knock at the door made them both turn. "Miss Ashford?" A woman's voice, tentative, the wedding coordinator. "They're ready for you." Victoria looked at Nathaniel, at the door, at the impossible choice suddenly made real and immediate. "What happens if I walk out there and say no?" she whispered. "Marcus will be humiliated. Your father will be furious. Your family will probably never forgive you. People will talk for years." Nathaniel's expression didn't change. "And you'll be alive and free." "Miss Ashford?" The coordinator knocked again. Victoria moved toward the door. Her hand landed on the handle. The metal was cool under her palm, solid and real. She could do this. Walk out, finish it, become Mrs. Marcus Holloway. Let him invest in her father's company, save her family, fulfill every expectation that had been placed on her since the engagement. It would be fine. She could manage it. She just had to be better, smarter, more careful about not provoking him. "Don't make me look foolish, Victoria." Her hand tightened on the handle. "We'll talk about this later." She thought about later, about the honeymoon Marcus had planned. 2 weeks in the Maldives, isolated and alone with him. About moving into his penthouse, leaving her apartment behind. About the slow erasure of everything she was until only what he wanted remained. She thought about the camera equipment gathering dust in her closet, the photography classes she'd quit when Marcus called them a waste of time, the friends she'd stopped seeing because they asked too many questions, the parts of herself she'd already sacrificed, and all the parts still waiting to be fed to his need for control. She opened the door. The coordinator stood there, anxious and hopeful. Behind her, the hallway stretched back toward the cathedral, toward the waiting crowd, toward everything Victoria was supposed to become. Tell them, her voice caught. She cleared her throat, tried again. Tell them I need another minute, please. The coordinator's smile faltered. Miss Ashford, the guests. I know, one more minute, I promise. She closed the door before the woman could respond. Nathaniel was exactly where she'd left him, standing in the middle of the office like he'd known she wouldn't go through with it. I can't do this, Victoria said. I know. No, I mean... She pressed her hands to her face, felt the smeared makeup, the evidence of everything she'd tried to hide. I can't walk out there and marry him. I can't. I've been telling myself I could, that I just needed to get through today, but I can't. Okay. Okay? She dropped her hands. That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say? I don't know. Talk me out of it. Tell me I'm being dramatic. Tell me... Victoria. He said her name like it mattered. You already made the decision. Now you just need to follow through. I don't know how. Yes, you do. He crossed to her, and this time when he stopped, he was close enough that she could feel the steadiness of him, the absolute certainty. You walk back out there, you tell him no, and then you leave. Just like that. Just like that. And then what? Where do I go? What do I do? My family will survive without making you the price of their survival. Nathaniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, plain white with just a name and number. Call me when you're ready. I'll help. Why would you help me? Because someone should have helped the last woman Marcus hurt, and because I have the resources to make sure he can't come after you. Victoria took the card. Her fingers were still shaking. What resources? The kind that make men like Marcus very nervous. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. Trust me. Another knock at the door. Harder this time. Miss Ashford, I'm sorry, but we really need you now. Victoria looked down at herself, the dress, the smeared makeup, the whole elaborate costume of a life she didn't want. Then she looked at Nathaniel. Will you walk me out there? Something shifted in his expression. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. He nodded once. Then let's go. She opened the door to find not just the coordinator, but her father, Marcus, and her mother clustered in the hallway, their faces ranging from anxious to irritated. Finally, her father said. Victoria, I need to make an announcement, she interrupted. Marcus frowned. Sweetheart, you should really touch up your makeup first. No. The word came out stronger than she expected. I need to speak to everyone, now. Her mother made a small, distressed sound. Victoria, darling, you look... I know how I look. She stepped into the hallway and Nathaniel moved with her, a quiet presence at her shoulder. Take me back to the cathedral. Victoria, Marcus's voice hardened. What's going on? She met his eyes and saw the exact moment he understood. The concern vanished from his face, replaced by something cold and sharp and absolutely furious. Don't, he said quietly. Don't you dare. I'm sorry. She wasn't. I can't do this. You're just nervous, overwhelmed. Let's go somewhere private and talk about... I'm not marrying you, Marcus. The silence that followed felt like falling. Her father recovered first. Victoria, think about what you're saying. I have thought about it. She was still looking at Marcus, watching the calculation happen behind his eyes. I've thought about it for months, and I'm done. You're making a mistake, Marcus said. His voice stayed level, controlled, but his hands had curled into fists. A very big mistake. Maybe, but it's mine to make. She turned away from him and started walking toward the cathedral, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She didn't check to see if anyone followed. She just kept moving, one step after another, until she pushed through the doors and back into the massive space where 200 people waited. The collective gasp was immediate. Victoria didn't look at the guests. She walked straight down the aisle, past the rows of confused faces and whispered questions, past the flowers and the candles and all the expensive staging of a future that was never going to happen. She stopped at the altar. The microphone was still there, set up for the vows. She picked it up. "I'm sorry," she said, and her voice echoed through the cathedral, clear and certain. "The wedding is off." The silence was absolute. Then the chaos began. Voices rising, people standing, her mother's wail of dismay cutting through everything else. But Victoria was already moving, already leaving, already choosing the terrifying freedom of uncertainty over the crushing certainty of Marcus Holloway's love. Nathaniel was waiting by the side exit. He didn't say anything, just held the door open and followed her out into the late afternoon sunlight. Victoria stood on the steps, still in her wedding dress, and breathed air that tasted like spring and possibility. Behind her, she could hear her father shouting her name, Marcus's voice raised in fury, the collapse of everything her family had planned and needed and demanded. In front of her, the city stretched out, vast and indifferent, and suddenly full of potential. "What now?" she asked. Nathaniel looked at her, really looked, with that attention that saw everything, and smiled. "Now we make sure you stay free." The car Nathaniel had called arrived within minutes, a black sedan that pulled up to the cathedral's side entrance while chaos still echoed inside. Victoria climbed in without looking back, the wedding dress bunching around her in awkward waves of silk. She couldn't get the corset to stop digging into her ribs, couldn't make her hands stop shaking, couldn't process what she'd just done. Nathaniel slid in beside her and gave the driver an address she didn't recognize. "Where are we going?" Her voice sounded hollow. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere Marcus won't think to look." The car pulled away from the curb just as her father burst through the side doors, his face purple with rage. Victoria watched through the tinted window as he scanned the street, his mouth moving in what she imagined were curses or commands. Then the car turned the corner, and he disappeared. She pressed her hand to her mouth, felt the tremor in her fingers, and realized she was either about to laugh or cry and wasn't sure which would be worse. "Breathe," Nathaniel said quietly. "In through your nose, out through your mouth." "I'm breathing." "You're hyperventilating. There's a difference." She tried to follow his instruction, but her lungs felt too small, too tight, like the panic was taking up all the space her air was supposed to occupy. The dress wasn't helping. Nothing was helping. "Pull over," she managed. The driver glanced at Nathaniel in the rearview mirror. Nathaniel nodded, and the car smoothly moved to the curb. Victoria shoved the door open and half fell onto the sidewalk, dragging yards of silk with her. She made it 2 steps before her legs gave out, and she ended up sitting on the concrete, the wedding dress pooling around her like evidence of a crime scene. Nathaniel appeared beside her. He didn't touch her, didn't crowd her, just crouched down at a careful distance and waited. "I just destroyed my entire family," Victoria said to the pavement. "No, you just refuse to be destroyed for them." "Same thing." "Not even close." She looked up at him, this stranger who'd somehow become the only person on her side in the space of an hour. "You don't know my father. You don't know what he'll do." "What can he do?" "Cut me off, disown me, tell everyone I'm unstable, dramatic, selfish." The words tumbled out faster. "He'll make sure no one in our circle talks to me. My mother will never forgive me. Claire will have to deal with the fallout. The business will collapse, and it'll be my fault, all my fault, because I couldn't just—" "Victoria." Nathaniel's voice cut through her spiral. "Stop." She stopped, breathing hard, feeling like she might throw up. "All of that might happen," he said. "Probably will happen, and you'll survive it." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." He shifted his weight, settling into a more comfortable position on the curb, like he planned to stay there as long as necessary. "You want to know how I know?" She didn't answer, but he continued anyway. "Because you just walked away from a man who was hurting you, in front of 200 witnesses, knowing exactly what it would cost. That takes more strength than surviving your father's disappointment. It doesn't feel like strength. It never does. Not at first." He paused. "It feels like falling. Like everything solid just disappeared and you're waiting to hit bottom." "Yes." The word came out broken. "Exactly like that. But here's the thing about falling. Eventually you land, and then you figure out how to stand up again." He stood, offering her his hand. Come on, you can't stay on the sidewalk in a wedding dress. People are staring. Victoria glanced around and realized he was right. A small crowd had gathered at a polite distance, phones out, clearly documenting what was probably going to be a viral story by tonight. Runaway bride in designer dress sits on city sidewalk with mysterious man. She could already see the headlines. She took Nathaniel's hand and let him pull her up. The dress fought her every step, but she managed to get back to the car without falling again. They drove for another 20 minutes, winding through neighborhoods Victoria only vaguely recognized, until the car stopped in front of a brownstone in a quiet residential area. Old trees lined the street. No cameras, no witnesses. "What is this place?" she asked as Nathaniel helped her out of the car. "A safe house. Technically, it belongs to a friend who's out of the country for the next month." He led her up the steps and unlocked the front door with a key that suggested this wasn't the first time he'd used this particular refuge. "You can stay here as long as you need." The interior was exactly what she would have expected from the exterior. Hardwood floors, exposed brick, furniture that looked expensive but lived in. Warm, normal. Nothing like the sterile perfection of Marcus's penthouse or the oppressive elegance of her family's estate. "There's a bedroom upstairs," Nathaniel continued, moving through the space with familiar ease. "Bathroom's attached. I'll find you something to change into." Victoria stood in the entryway, still drowning in silk, and felt the full weight of her situation finally settle. She was homeless. Cut off from her family. Probably about to be cut off from her bank accounts. Her father controlled most of her money, and Marcus had been handling the rest. She had no job, no immediate prospects, and nowhere to go except this borrowed safe house with a man she'd met 3 hours ago. "I don't have anything," she said quietly. Nathaniel paused in the base of the stairs. "What?" "No clothes. No phone. I left it at the cathedral. No wallet. No keys." She laughed, high and sharp. "I literally have nothing except this dress and the bruises underneath it. We'll fix that." "How?" "One problem at a time." He started up the stairs, then looked back at her. "Are you coming?" She followed because there wasn't another option. The bedroom was on the second floor, spacious and mercifully simple. A bed, a dresser, a chair by the window. Nathaniel rummaged through the dresser and emerged with sweatpants and a t-shirt that looked several sizes too large. "These belong to my friend's brother. They'll be big, but they're clean." He set them on the bed. "Take your time. I'll be downstairs." He left, closing the door behind him. Victoria stood alone in the quiet room and slowly, carefully, began the process of removing the wedding dress. The zipper stuck halfway down. Her ribs protested every movement. The corset underneath required 10 minutes of fumbling with hooks and laces before she finally got it loose enough to pull over her head. When she was finally down to just her undergarments, she caught sight of herself in the full-length mirror on the closet door. The bruises were worse than she'd remembered. The one on her ribs had spread, a constellation of purple and yellow that wrapped around her left side. Her upper arms showed finger marks. There was another on her thigh, high up where no one would see. From 2 weeks ago when Marcus had grabbed her too hard during an argument about the honeymoon itinerary. She looked like evidence. She looked like someone who should have left months ago. Victoria pulled on borrowed clothes, rolled the sweatpants cuff several times so she wouldn't trip, and tried not to think about how this was her life now. Charity clothes in a borrowed house with a stranger downstairs who claimed he could help. When she came back down, Nathaniel was in the kitchen. He'd shed his jacket and rolled his sleeves higher, and he was doing something complicated with a coffee maker that suggested he'd done this before. "Coffee?" he offered. "I don't drink coffee." "Tea?" "Sure." He switched gears without missing a beat, reaching for a kettle instead. The domesticity of it felt surreal. Victoria sat at the small kitchen table and watched him move through the space. "You said you knew Marcus. How?" "We went to the same prep school, same social circle for a while." Nathaniel filled the kettle, set it on the stove. "His father and mine did business together." "Did." Past tense. "My father died 6 years ago. Marcus's father 3 years after that." He pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet. "The business relationship didn't survive either of them." "What kind of business?" "The kind where people make a lot of money and don't ask too many questions about how." He glanced at her. "My father was a venture capitalist. Marcus's father ran private equity. They specialized in hostile takeovers and asset stripping." "That's cheerful." It's honest. The kettle started to whistle. Nathaniel poured hot water over a tea bag in one of the mugs and brought it to her. Marcus learned everything he knows from his father: control, leverage, how to identify weakness and exploit it. Victoria wrapped her hands around the mug, letting the heat seep into her palms. Is that what I am? Weakness? You were a strategic acquisition. Your father's company was failing. Marcus wanted access to the client list and the real estate portfolio. Marrying you was cheaper than a buyout. The words should have hurt, but they just felt true. She'd known, on some level, that the engagement wasn't about love, but hearing it stated so plainly made it impossible to pretend otherwise. So what are you? She asked. Some kind of white knight? Hardly. Nathaniel leaned against the counter, his own coffee in hand. I'm someone who recognized a bad situation and decided to intervene. Why? Because 5 years ago, I didn't intervene and someone got hurt. The way he said it made Victoria look up. Who? Marcus's last girlfriend. Amanda. Nathaniel's expression went carefully blank. She was in your position, pressured into staying with him by her family, convinced she could manage his temper, sure he'd change after they got more serious. He put her in the hospital twice before she finally left. Victoria's stomach turned. Where is she now? Last I heard, she moved to Seattle, changed her name. Won't talk about what happened because Marcus made her sign an NDA as part of the settlement. He paid her off. He made the problem go away. That's what men like Marcus do. Nathaniel set his coffee down. I knew her. Not well, but enough to see the pattern developing. And I did nothing. Told myself it wasn't my business, that she was an adult who could make her own choices. Then I got the call that she was in the ICU with a fractured skull. The kitchen felt very quiet. I'm sorry, Victoria said. Don't be sorry. Just don't end up in the same place. I won't. She said it with more certainty than she felt. Nathaniel studied her for a long moment. What's your plan? My plan? You walked away from your wedding with no resources, no support system, and a very angry ex-fiancé who's used to getting what he wants. What are you going to do now? Victoria opened her mouth and found she had no answer. She hadn't thought past getting out, getting away. The future beyond that was just blank space. I don't know, she admitted. Then let me make a suggestion. Nathaniel moved to sit across from her at the table. Stay here for the next few days. Let me handle the immediate fallout. Your belongings, your accounts, making sure Marcus doesn't try anything stupid. Once the dust settles, we'll figure out next steps. Why would you do all that? Because you need help, and I'm offering it. Nobody does something for nothing. I'm not asking for anything in return. He met her eyes, steady and direct. Consider it penance for not helping Amanda when I should have. Victoria wanted to argue, to insist she could handle this herself, but the truth was she couldn't. Not alone. Not right now. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. Nathaniel nodded. You should eat something. When's the last time you had food? She tried to remember. The morning had been a blur of makeup and hair and her mother's anxious hovering. Breakfast, maybe. I don't remember. I'll order something. He pulled out his phone and started scrolling through delivery options. Victoria watched him, this strange man who'd inserted himself into her crisis, and tried to figure out what his angle was. Everyone had an angle. Her father had taught her that much. But if Nathaniel Carver had ulterior motives, she couldn't see them yet. Her own phone was probably still in the bridal suite, along with her purse, her identification, everything that proved she existed in the world. She was going to have to deal with that eventually. Call her bank, cancel her cards, figure out how to survive without access to any of her accounts. The panic started creeping back. I need to call my sister, she said abruptly. Nathaniel looked up from his phone. Now? She's probably terrified, doesn't know if I'm okay. Your family might try to trace the call. Claire wouldn't do that. Are you sure? Victoria thought about her younger sister, 23, still living at home, still dependent on their parents for everything. Claire had always been the good one, the one who followed rules and met expectations. But she'd also been the one who noticed things, who'd asked Victoria about the bruises twice before Victoria shut down the conversation. No, she admitted. I'm not sure. Give it a day. Let things settle. Then we'll find a safe way to reach out. The food arrived 40 minutes later. Thai takeout that Nathaniel apparently ordered from memory. Victoria ate without tasting anything, her body running on autopilot while her mind tried to process the last 4 hours. She'd called off her wedding, she'd walked away from Marcus, she'd destroyed her family's financial safety net and probably her relationship with her parents. She'd chosen herself over everyone and everything she was supposed to prioritize, and she had no idea if it was the right choice or the worst mistake of her life. "You're thinking too much," Nathaniel observed. "How can you tell? You've been staring at the same piece of chicken for 3 minutes." Victoria set down her fork. "I keep waiting to feel something. Relief, maybe, or regret. But I just feel numb." "That's normal. You're in shock. Is there a timeline for when the shock wears off?" "Usually when reality hits." He pushed the takeout containers to the side. "Which will probably be tomorrow when your phone starts blowing up. Speaking of which," he pulled a small box from his pocket and slid it across the table. "Burner phone. Untraceable. Keep it on you." Victoria opened the box to find a basic flip phone, the kind drug dealers used in movies. "You just had this lying around?" "I keep a few for emergencies." "How often do you have emergencies that require burner phones?" "More often than you'd think." He didn't elaborate. She turned the phone over in her hands. "What's your emergency, Nathaniel?" "What do you mean?" "Everyone has something that made them who they are. Something that broke them or taught them or changed how they see the world." Victoria looked at him directly. "What's yours?" He was quiet for long enough that she thought he might not answer. Then he said, "My father built his fortune destroying other people's companies. He was good at it, ruthless. By the time I was old enough to understand what he did, I'd already learned to be ashamed of where our money came from." "So you walked away?" "Eventually. After he died and I inherited everything, I spent the last 6 years trying to undo some of the damage, returning assets, settling debts, making reparations where possible." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Turns out guilt is expensive." "Is that what I am to you? Another reparation?" "No. You're someone who deserves better than what she was getting." The answer felt true, but Victoria had stopped trusting her ability to tell the difference between truth and performance. Marcus had been very good at performing care right up until he wasn't. She stood, suddenly exhausted. "I should sleep." "Take the bedroom. I'll take the couch." "This is your friend's place. And you're the one who just survived a traumatic day. Go." He gestured toward the stairs. "We'll deal with everything else tomorrow." Victoria climbed the stairs feeling like she weighed 1,000 pounds. The bedroom was dark and quiet, and she collapsed onto the bed still wearing the borrowed clothes. She should cry. She should feel something. But the numbness Nathaniel had identified just spread wider, filling all the space where emotions were supposed to live. She closed her eyes and tried not to think about what she'd done. Sleep didn't come. Around midnight, she heard Nathaniel's voice from downstairs, quiet, measured, clearly on the phone with someone. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone suggested business, strategy, plans being made while she lay in the dark trying to figure out how to exist in this new reality she'd created. Around 2 in the morning, her body finally gave up on consciousness. She dreamed about this cathedral, about walking down the aisle. Except this time she couldn't stop, couldn't turn around, and Marcus was waiting at the altar with his perfect smile and his controlled fury, and when she tried to run, her legs wouldn't move and the dress got heavier and heavier until she couldn't breathe. She woke gasping. The room was still dark, still quiet, still unfamiliar. Victoria pressed her hand to her ribs, felt the ache there, and used the pain to ground herself. Real, present, safe. For now. She didn't sleep again after that. When dawn finally broke through the bedroom window, she heard movement downstairs. Nathaniel, probably, already awake and dealing with whatever needed dealing with. She should get up, face the day, start figuring out how to build a life from nothing. Instead, she stayed in bed, watching the light change, and wondered if her mother had cried or raged or simply pretended Victoria had never existed. Wondered if Claire was okay. Wondered if Marcus had already started the process of destroying her reputation, or if he'd wait until she was more vulnerable. Wondered if leaving had actually solved anything, or just traded one kind of trap for another. A knock at the door interrupted her spiral. "Victoria," Nathaniel's voice. "You awake?" "Yes. Can I come in?" She sat up, trying to make herself presentable, even though presentable felt like a concept from another life. Okay. Nathaniel entered carrying another mug of tea. He looked like he'd actually slept, which seemed impossible given the couch situation. He also looked like he had news, and from his expression, it wasn't good. What happened? She asked. Your father's calling a press conference for this afternoon. Damage control. He handed her the tea. I have a contact at the network. They're planning to spin this as a mental health crisis. You've been under tremendous stress, they'll say. Wedding jitters escalated into a breakdown. The family is devastated but supportive and seeking treatment options for you. Victoria's hands tightened around the mug. Of course they are. There's more. Marcus filed a breach of contract suit last night. He's suing your father's company for the investment he was going to make. Can he do that? He can try. Whether it'll hold up is another question, but it doesn't matter. The goal is to apply pressure, make your family blame you for the financial collapse. Which they will. Probably. Nathaniel sat on the edge of the bed, keeping a respectful distance. But here's the thing. I looked into Marcus's finances last night. Really looked. And he's not as solvent as he appears. Victoria frowned. What does that mean? It means the investment he promised your father? He didn't have it, not liquid anyway. Most of his assets are tied up in failing ventures and leveraged to hell. He was going to use your father's company as collateral for more loans. So marrying me would have saved him, not us. Exactly. Nathaniel's expression hardened. He was never your family's white knight. He was looking for a life raft, and you were going to be the anchor that kept him afloat. The information should have made her feel better, validated maybe, in her decision to leave. Instead, it just made her angrier. All of it had been a lie. The courtship, the promises, the careful construction of a future that was only ever designed to benefit Marcus. What else did you find? She asked. Enough to make him very nervous if it became public. Nathaniel met her eyes. Which is why I'm going to make it public. What? I have contacts in financial journalism. People who would be very interested in a story about Marcus Holloway's creative accounting and questionable business practices. He leaned forward slightly. I can destroy him, Victoria. Professionally, publicly, make sure he never has this kind of power over anyone again. The offer hung between them. Why are you telling me this? Victoria asked carefully. Because it's your choice. You walked away. That took courage. But if you want to fight back, I'll give you the weapons. She thought about Marcus, about Amanda in the hospital with a fractured skull, about every woman before and after who'd believed his promises and paid for it with their safety, their dignity, their lives. She thought about her father, who'd handed her over like property, about her mother, who'd looked away from every bruise, about the press conference happening in a few hours that would paint her as unstable, broken, in need of management. Do it, she said. Nathaniel smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. Consider it done. The press conference aired at 3 o'clock. Victoria watched it on the small television in the Brownstones' living room, Nathaniel beside her with his laptop open and his phone within reach. Her father looked older on screen, grayer. The camera emphasized the lines around his mouth, the tightness in his jaw. He stood at a podium with the family company logo behind him, her mother positioned slightly to his left, looking medicated and tragic. My daughter Victoria has been under tremendous strain, Robert Ashford said, his voice heavy with manufactured concern. The pressure of planning a wedding, combined with some personal struggles she's been facing, became overwhelming. What happened yesterday was a cry for help, and as a family, we're committed to getting her the support she needs. Victoria's hands clenched in her lap. We ask for privacy during this difficult time as Victoria receives treatment, her father continued. And we want to assure everyone that the Ashford family stands behind Marcus Holloway completely. He's shown nothing but grace and understanding throughout this ordeal. The camera cut to Marcus, standing off to the side, looking appropriately concerned and wounded. He'd clearly prepared remarks. I love Victoria, he'd said, and his voice had exactly the right amount of tremor. I just want her to be healthy and safe. That's all that matters to me. Liar, Victoria said to the screen. Her mother stepped up to the microphone, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Please respect our family's privacy, and if anyone has information about Victoria's whereabouts, we're asking you to contact us. We're very worried about her. The implication was clear. Victoria was missing, unstable, possibly dangerous to herself. They'd transformed her escape into a mental health crisis, her choice into a symptom. Nathaniel closed his laptop. How are you doing? I want to put my fist through the television. Understandable. They actually did it. Made me the villain. Victoria stood, pacing the small living room because sitting still felt impossible. My mother's crying on camera like I died. My father's talking about treatment like I'm some kind of psychiatric emergency. And Marcus, she stopped, turned. He gets to stand there and play the devoted fiancé while everyone forgets what he is. Not for long. Nathaniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and something shifted in his expression. The story just posted. What story? Marcus's financial house of cards. My contact at the Journal ran it an hour ago. It's already trending. He pulled up the article on his laptop and turned the screen toward her. The headline read, Holloway Investments Under Scrutiny, Reports of Fraud, Embezzlement, and Questionable Business Practices. Victoria scanned the article. It was thorough. Detailed breakdowns of Marcus's failing investments, evidence of falsified asset reports, testimonies from former business partners about intimidation and threats. There was even a mention of Amanda, unnamed but clearly referenced, describing a pattern of violence toward women in his personal life. How did you get all this? She asked. I've been collecting it for years, ever since Amanda. Nathaniel leaned back against the couch. I just needed a reason to use it. And I'm the reason. You're the catalyst. There's a difference. Victoria read through the article again, slower this time, absorbing every detail. By the end, Marcus Holloway looked less like a respectable businessman and more like a criminal who'd been operating in plain sight. He's going to know it was you, she said. He already knows. I made sure of it. Nathaniel's expression stayed calm. Let him come. That doesn't scare you? Marcus is dangerous when he has power over someone. When that power's gone, he's just a bully with expensive lawyers. Nathaniel stood, moving to the window. And his lawyers are about to get very busy. Victoria's burner phone buzzed on the coffee table. She'd given the number to exactly one person, Claire, in a carefully worded text that morning that said only, I'm safe. Don't tell anyone you heard from me. The text now on the screen said, Dad's losing it. Marcus is threatening to sue everyone. Mom won't stop crying. What did you do? Victoria showed Nathaniel the message. Your sister, he said. Yeah. Are you going to respond? Victoria thought about it. About Claire, who'd always been sheltered from the worst of their family's dysfunction, who still believed their parents wanted what was best for everyone, who probably didn't understand why Victoria had run, much less why she'd blown up Marcus's life in the process. She typed back, I did what I had to do. Are you okay? The response came fast. I don't know. Everything's falling apart. It was already falling apart, Victoria sent. You just didn't see it. There was a long pause. Then, can I see you? Victoria looked at Nathaniel. She wants to meet. That's a bad idea. I know. Your family's looking for you. If she tells them where you are, she won't. Victoria said it with more certainty than she felt. Claire's not like that. People do unexpected things when they're scared or pressured. I know, but she's my sister. Victoria looked down at the phone. I can't just disappear on her. Nathaniel was quiet for a moment, then sighed. If you're going to do this, we do it smart. Public place. Neutral ground. I'll be nearby. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Because Marcus is going to be looking for any opportunity to get to you, and your sister is the most obvious vulnerability. He pulled out his own phone. Where does she like to go? Victoria thought about it. Claire had always loved the botanical gardens, the quiet paths, the greenhouse, the koi pond where she'd spend hours just watching the fish. It was open, public, hard to corner someone. The gardens, she said. Tomorrow afternoon. Nathaniel nodded and started typing. I'll arrange security, discreet, but there. Security? You walked away from a man who doesn't like losing. You then helped expose him publicly. You think he's just going to let that go? Nathaniel met her eyes. We're not taking chances. The weight of it hit her again. The reality that she wasn't just rebuilding her life, she was defending it. Marcus wasn't going to fade quietly into the background. He was going to fight, retaliate, try to drag her back into his control one way or another. I should have stayed, she said quietly. No. If I just married him, none of this would be happening. The company would be saved, my family would be happy. Marcus would have what he wanted. And you'd be dead within 5 years. Nathaniel said it flatly. Maybe sooner. Is that worth everyone else's comfort? Victoria didn't answer. Your father made choices that put his company in jeopardy, Nathaniel continued. Your mother made choices that prioritized appearances over your safety. Marcus made choices that hurt people. None of that is your responsibility to fix by sacrificing yourself. Then whose responsibility is it? Theirs. But they don't want to face that, so they made you the problem. He moved closer, his voice gentler. You're not the villain here, Victoria. You're just the first person who refused to play along. She wanted to believe him, wanted to accept that walking away had been brave instead of selfish, necessary instead of destructive. But the guilt sat heavy in her chest anyway, familiar and suffocating. Her phone buzzed again. Claire, tomorrow at 2? By the pond? Victoria typed, I'll be there. She spent the rest of the evening trying not to think about all the ways the meeting could go wrong. Nathaniel made phone calls, sent emails, coordinated things she wasn't privy to. Around 8, food arrived, Indian this time, from a restaurant she'd never heard of. You're going to run out of cuisines eventually, she said, accepting the container he handed her. I know a lot of restaurants. Apparently, she picked at the rice, not particularly hungry. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why are you really doing all this? And don't say penance. That's too simple. Nathaniel set down his own food. You want the complicated answer? I want the true one. He considered that. My father spent 40 years proving that money and power mean you can do whatever you want to, whoever you want. He destroyed lives, broke companies, ruined people, and never faced consequences. He died wealthy and respected, and everyone at his funeral talked about what a brilliant businessman he was. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. I couldn't stop him, couldn't change him, but I can stop men like him now. Marcus is everything my father was. Entitled, violent, convinced his money makes him untouchable. Helping you isn't penance, it's revenge. The honesty of it surprised her. Revenge on who? On every man who thinks he can buy his way out of being a decent human being. He picked up his fork, stabbed at his food. Your turn. Why photography? The subject change was obvious, but Victoria went with it. My grandmother gave me a camera when I was 12, one of those old film ones where you had to really think about each shot because you only had so many exposures. Did you like it? I loved it. Loved the control of it, choosing what to focus on, what to leave out, how to frame something so it told the story you wanted. She smiled slightly. My parents thought it was a phase. Marcus thought it was a waste of time, but it was the only thing that felt like mine. When's the last time you took a photo? Victoria tried to remember. 8 months ago? Marcus said I was spending too much time on it, that I should be focusing on wedding planning instead. And you stopped. I stopped a lot of things. The admission tasted bitter. Nathaniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, There's a camera shop 3 blocks from here. We could go tomorrow morning, before you meet your sister. I don't have money for a camera. Consider it a loan. I can't. Victoria. He looked at her directly. You're going to need something that's yours again. Something that reminds you who you were before Marcus. Let it be this. She wanted to argue, wanted to insist she didn't need charity or pity or whatever this was. But the thought of holding a camera again, of looking through a viewfinder and choosing what mattered, made something in her chest loosen. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. They finished eating in companionable silence. Victoria helped clean up despite Nathaniel's protests, needing something to do with her hands. Her mind kept circling back to tomorrow, seeing Claire, facing whatever came with that, trying to explain choices that still felt too raw to articulate. You should sleep, Nathaniel said eventually. I'm not tired. You will be. Tomorrow's going to be long. He was right, but Victoria didn't want to go back upstairs to that borrowed bedroom with its too quiet darkness and her too loud thoughts. She wanted to stay here in the warmth of the kitchen where someone else was handling things, and she could pretend just for a little longer that everything would work out fine. What happens after tomorrow? She asked instead. After you meet your sister? After all of this? After Marcus's scandal breaks wider? After my family realizes I'm not coming back? She leaned against the counter. What happens to me? Whatever you decide happens. That's not an answer. It's the only answer that matters. Nathaniel rinsed the last dish, set it in the drainer. You can stay here as long as you need. Once you're ready, we'll figure out next steps. Job, housing, whatever you need to be independent. But the timeline is yours. And you'll just keep helping me. Out of revenge. Out of conviction that you deserve better than what you had. He dried his hands on a towel. Look, I'm not pretending to be selfless here. Destroying Marcus's reputation benefits me too. But that doesn't make your freedom less important. Victoria studied him, this man who'd become her unlikely ally. I don't know if I trust you. Smart. You shouldn't trust anyone right now. He folded the towel carefully. But you don't have to trust me to accept my help. You just have to decide if the help is worth the risk. And if I decide it's not, then I'll drive you wherever you want to go and you'll never hear from me again. He said it simply, like he meant it. Victoria thought about that. About walking away from the only support she had, trying to navigate this mess alone with no money and no resources, and Marcus actively working to destroy her credibility. The smart play was to stay, accept Nathaniel's help until she was stable enough to manage on her own. Trust could come later, or not at all. I'll stay, she said. For now. For now is enough. Nathaniel moved toward the living room. Get some rest. We leave at 9 for the camera shop. This time, Victoria did go upstairs. She lay in the darkness, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the brownstone settling, and tried to imagine a future that looked different from the past she'd escaped. It felt impossible, but then again, so had walking away, and she'd done that. Maybe impossible just meant difficult. Maybe it meant terrifying. Maybe it meant necessary. She closed her eyes and eventually slept. The camera shop was exactly the kind of place Victoria would have loved before Marcus. Small, cluttered, smelling like dust and possibility. The owner was an older man with glasses perpetually sliding down his nose, who looked at Nathaniel like they knew each other. She needs a camera, Nathaniel said without preamble. Something reliable, professional grade. The owner looked at Victoria. What kind of photography? I used to do portraits mostly, street photography sometimes. Her voice felt rusty. It's been a while. Film or digital? I learned on film. But you want digital now, more forgiving when you're getting back into it. He disappeared into the back room and emerged with 3 different cameras, setting them on the counter. Try these. See which one feels right. Victoria picked up the first one, too heavy, the grip awkward in her hands. The second was better, but the viewfinder wasn't quite right. The third settled into her palm like it had been waiting for her. That one? The owner said, seeing her expression. Good choice. I'll throw in a lens and a bag. How much? Victoria asked. Don't worry about it, Nathaniel said. I need to know. The owner named a number that made Victoria wince. Nathaniel handed over a credit card without hesitation. 10 minutes later, they were back on the street, Victoria carrying a camera bag that felt like possibility. Thank you, she said. Really? I'll pay you back. If you want to, but it's not required. Nathaniel checked his watch. We have 3 hours before you meet your sister. What do you want to do? Victoria looked around the neighborhood. The morning light hitting old buildings, people moving through their ordinary lives, the city existing exactly as it always had while her entire world rearranged itself. She pulled the camera from the bag, felt the familiar weight of it, and raised it to her eye. Through the viewfinder, everything looked different, purposeful, chosen. She took a photo of the street corner, then another of a woman walking her dog, then the way light fell through leaves. Each click felt like reclaiming something. Better? Nathaniel asked. Getting there. They walked for a while, Victoria stopping periodically to photograph things that caught her attention. Nathaniel stayed nearby but gave her space, understanding somehow that this was something she needed to do alone. By the time they headed to the botanical gardens, Victoria had taken 63 photos and felt more like herself than she had in months. The gardens were busy for a weekday afternoon, tourists, students, people escaping offices for lunch. Victoria spotted Claire immediately, sitting on a bench near the koi pond exactly where she'd said she'd be. Her sister looked younger than 23, fragile in a way that made Victoria's chest tighten. I'll be over there, Nathaniel said, gesturing to a bench 30 feet away with clear sight lines. You need me. Just look my direction. Victoria nodded and walked toward her sister. Claire stood when she saw her, and for a moment they just looked at each other. Then Claire burst into tears. I thought you were dead, she sobbed. Or hurt, or... I didn't know, Victoria. Nobody would tell me anything. Victoria pulled her into a hug, felt Claire shake against her. I'm okay. I'm safe. Where have you been? Somewhere Marcus can't find me. Claire pulled back, wiping at her eyes. Why did you run? I mean, I know things were... But just leaving like that in front of everyone... I couldn't marry him, Claire. But Dad's company wasn't worth selling myself for. Neither was Dad's approval or Mom's peace of mind or anyone else's comfort. Victoria sat down on the bench, pulled Claire down beside her. Marcus was hurting me. You saw the bruises. You asked me about them. Claire looked away. I thought maybe you'd just, I don't know, bumped into something. You knew better than that. I wanted to believe better than that. Claire's voice dropped. Because if I believed it, I'd have to do something about it, and I didn't know what to do. The admission hung between them. I'm not angry at you, Victoria said quietly. I barely did anything about it myself until I couldn't anymore. But I need you to understand, I didn't leave to hurt anyone. I left to survive. Dad doesn't see it that way. He thinks you had some kind of breakdown. Mom's convinced you need hospitalization. Claire twisted her hands together. And Marcus keeps coming over, acting like he's so worried, but there's something wrong about it. Like he's angry under all the concern. He is angry, and he's dangerous, Claire. If he contacts you, if he asks about me, I won't tell him anything. Claire met her eyes. I won't. I promise. Victoria wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that her sister would hold the line when their parents pressured her, when Marcus turned on the charm, when the whole family machine worked to extract information. But Claire had never been good at withstanding pressure. The article about Marcus, Claire said. The one that came out yesterday. Did you know about that? Yes. Did you help make it happen? Yes. Claire absorbed that. He's threatening to sue the newspaper, and Dad, and you, if he can find you. She paused. He told Dad that you stole something from him, documents or files or something. Is that true? No, but it doesn't matter if it's true. Marcus will say whatever he needs to say to make himself the victim. The article says he hurt people, women he dated. Claire looked at Victoria directly. Did he hurt you like that? Victoria could lie, could soften it, make it seem less serious than it was. But Claire deserved the truth. Yes, she said simply. Claire's face crumpled. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was ashamed, because I thought I could handle it, because by the time I realized I couldn't, I didn't know how to ask for help. Victoria took her sister's hand. But I'm out now, and I'm not going back. What about us? The family? What about it? You're just going to disappear, never see Mom and Dad again, never come home? That wasn't home, Claire. That was a cage I'd been living in so long I forgot what freedom looked like. Victoria squeezed her sister's hand. I love you, but I can't go back to being who they wanted me to be. That person almost got me killed. Claire was crying again, quiet tears that streaked her makeup. I don't want to lose you. You don't have to, but you have to accept that I'm making different choices now. Choices that might not make sense to you or Dad or anyone else. Victoria pulled a piece of paper from her pocket. She'd written down the burner phone number that morning. This is how you reach me. Don't give it to anyone. Not Mom, not Dad, definitely not Marcus. Just you. Claire took the paper, folded it carefully. Are you happy? Where you are now? Victoria thought about the brownstone, about Nathaniel's careful distance, about holding a camera again and remembering what it felt like to choose her own focus. I'm not happy yet, but I'm free. And that's a start. They sat together for a while longer, watching the koi drift through the pond. Claire talked about small things, a class she was taking, a friend's drama, the garden party their mother was planning despite everything. Normal things from a life Victoria no longer belonged to. Eventually, Claire had to leave. Some family obligation she couldn't skip without raising suspicion. They hugged goodbye, and Victoria watched her sister walk away, disappearing into the gardens like she might be the last piece of Victoria's old life she'd see for a long time. Nathaniel appeared at her elbow. How'd it go? She cried a lot, asked questions I couldn't really answer. Victoria shouldered her camera bag. But I think she understands. Will she tell your family where you are? I don't think so, but I'm not certain. Victoria looked at him. Should we move? Find somewhere else? Not yet, but we stay alert. He gestured toward the exit. Come on, let's get out of here before anyone else shows up. They were halfway to the parking lot when Victoria's burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. She showed Nathaniel, who frowned. Don't answer it. But Victoria's thumb was already pressing accept, some instinct telling her this wasn't random. Victoria. Marcus's voice, smooth and controlled. We need to talk. Her blood went cold. How did you get this number? Does it matter? I always find what I'm looking for. There was a pause. I'm willing to forgive this little episode. The wedding, the article, all of it. You were clearly not yourself. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix. We're done. No, we're not. The smoothness cracked slightly. You don't get to humiliate me and walk away, Victoria. That's not how this works. I'm not coming back. Then I'll come to you. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. And when I do, we're going to have a very long conversation about loyalty and consequences and what happens to people who betray me. The line went dead. Victoria stared at the phone, her hands shaking. He knows, she said. Nathaniel was already moving, pulling her toward the car. He knows where I am or how to find me or we're leaving. Now. They reached the car and Nathaniel practically pushed her into the passenger seat. That number was supposed to be secure. If he got it, Claire. Victoria felt sick. He must have gotten it from Claire. Or your family pressured her into giving up information. Either way, we can't stay at the brownstone. Nathaniel started the engine, pulling out faster than necessary. I have another place. Further out. Harder to track. He's going to keep coming. I know. Then what's the point? Why keep running if he's just going to... Because running keeps you alive long enough for me to finish what I started. Nathaniel's jaw was tight. The article was just the beginning. I have more. Evidence that'll put him in prison if it's presented right. I just need time. Victoria looked at him. How much time? A week, maybe less. He glanced at her. Can you stay hidden that long? She thought about Marcus's voice on the phone, the certainty in his threat. Thought about what would happen if he found her before Nathaniel's plan, whatever it was, came together. I don't know if I have a choice, she said. You always have a choice. Nathaniel turned onto the highway, heading away from the city. This one's just harder than most. Victoria clutched her camera bag and watched the city disappear behind them, wondering if she'd just made another escape or if she was just delaying the inevitable. The second safe house was an hour outside the city, tucked into a wooded area where houses sat far apart and neighbors minded their own business. It was smaller than the brownstone, older, with creaking floors and windows that rattled when the wind picked up. Nathaniel unlocked the door and went through first, checking rooms like he expected to find someone waiting. Clear, he said finally. Come in. Victoria stepped inside, still clutching her camera bag like it was the only solid thing left in her world. The house smelled like pine and disuse. Furniture sat under dust covers. The kitchen looked functional, but bare. Whose place is this? She asked. Mine. I bought it 2 years ago under a shell company. Nobody knows about it except my lawyer, and he doesn't know I'm here. Nathaniel moved through the space, pulling dust covers off furniture with efficient movements. We'll be safe here. For now. Victoria set down her bag and sank onto the couch, feeling exhaustion hit her all at once. The adrenaline from Marcus's call had burned through her system, leaving nothing but the crash. I led him right to you, she said quietly. Through Claire. You didn't know she'd give up the number. I should have known. She's never been able to keep secrets under pressure. Victoria pressed her palms to her eyes. I was so stupid to trust her. You weren't stupid. You were hopeful. There's a difference. Nathaniel sat down in the chair across from her. And we don't know for sure it was Claire. Could have been anyone. Your parents, someone at the gardens, even a tap on the burner phone itself. Does it matter how he got it? Not really. What matters is we adjust. He pulled out his own phone, started typing. I'm moving up the timeline, getting everything to my contacts tonight instead of waiting. What everything? Financial records showing Marcus has been embezzling from his own clients. Testimony from former employees about workplace harassment and intimidation. Security footage from his building showing him assaulting a delivery person 6 months ago. Nathaniel kept typing, and statements from 3 women, including Amanda, detailing his pattern of abuse. Victoria's throat tightened. They agreed to go public? With their identities protected, yes. They want him stopped as much as you do. He looked up. This goes live tomorrow morning. Financial crimes, assault charges, enough evidence to trigger multiple investigations. Marcus Holloway won't have time to come after you because he'll be too busy trying to stay out of prison. And if it doesn't work, it'll work. Nathaniel said it with absolute certainty. I've been building this case for 5 years. Every detail checked, every witness vetted, every document authenticated. This isn't a hit piece, it's a prosecution brief. Victoria wanted to feel relieved. Instead, she just felt hollow. He's going to know it was you. He already knows. Then he'll come after you too. Let him try. Nathaniel finished typing and set his phone aside. I'm not the one who needs protecting here. The words stung more than they should have. Victoria stood, needing distance, and walked to the window. Outside, trees pressed close to the house, their branches creating shadows that moved with the wind. It looked isolated, vulnerable. I hate this, she said. Hiding, running, waiting for someone else to fix my problems. I'm not fixing your problems. I'm providing resources. Nathaniel's voice came from behind her. You already fixed the biggest problem when you walked away. Did I? Because it feels like I just made everything worse. For who? Everyone. My family's company is collapsing. My parents hate me. Claire's caught in the middle. Marcus is out there planning revenge. She turned to face him. How is any of that better? You're alive, Nathaniel said simply. You're free. You're not spending the rest of your life managing the moods of a violent man. That's better. For me, maybe. For you, definitely, and that's what matters. Easy for you to say. You're not the one who destroyed everything. No, I'm the one who watched my father destroy things for 40 years and did nothing. Nathaniel's expression hardened. I know what it looks like when someone chooses self-preservation over everyone else's comfort. Your father did it when he tried to sell you to Marcus. Your mother did it when she looked away from the bruises. They made their choices. You made yours. Stop apologizing for being the only one brave enough to choose yourself. The words landed like punches. Victoria felt tears burn behind her eyes and blinked them back hard. I don't feel brave, she said. I feel terrified. Good. That means you're paying attention. Nathaniel moved closer but stopped before he invaded her space. Fear is useful. It keeps you alert. It's when you stop being afraid that you get careless. Victoria laughed, sharp and bitter. I don't think I'll ever stop being afraid. Not of Marcus. Then use it. Let it motivate you to build something he can't touch. He paused. You have your camera. Start taking photos. Build a portfolio. When this is over, you'll need a way to support yourself. Might as well start now. Nobody's going to hire a photographer whose reputation is currently being destroyed by her own family. Then don't use your real name. Not at first. Nathaniel pulled out his phone again, navigated to something. There's a small gallery 20 miles from here. They showcase local artists, do community exhibitions. I know the owner. She'd look at your work if I asked. Why would you do that? Because you need a future that isn't defined by Marcus or your family or anyone else who tried to control you. He held out the phone showing the gallery's website. And because talent shouldn't be wasted on fear. Victoria looked at the screen, at the bright photos of artwork and the description of upcoming shows. It felt impossible, but then again, everything felt impossible lately. I'll think about it, she said. Fair enough. Nathaniel pocketed his phone. I'm going to make some calls. There's food in the kitchen, canned stuff mostly, but edible. Help yourself. He disappeared into what looked like a small office, closing the door behind him. Victoria was left alone in the living room, surrounded by dust covers, and silence, and the weight of choices she couldn't take back. She picked up her camera bag and went outside. The property had a small porch that looked out over the trees. The light was starting to fade, everything taking on that golden quality that photographers called magic hour. Victoria sat on the steps, pulled out her camera, and started shooting. Trees, shadows, the way light filtered through leaves, a bird landing on a branch, the texture of bark. She wasn't trying to create art, just trying to see things, really see them, without the filter of panic or guilt or fear. Each click of the shutter felt like breathing. She must have been out there for an hour before Nathaniel appeared in the doorway. You're going to lose the light soon, he said. I know. How many photos? 216. Any good ones? Victoria looked down at the camera's display, scrolling through the images. Most were mediocre. Some were garbage. But 3 or 4 caught something, a quality of light, a moment of composition that felt right. Maybe a few, she admitted. That's better than none. Nathaniel sat down beside her on the steps, keeping a respectful distance. I talked to my contacts. Everything goes live at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Financial Times is running the lead story. 3 other outlets are coordinating releases throughout the day. That's fast. That's necessary. Marcus knows we're planning something. If we wait, he'll try to block it. Nathaniel watched the tree line. There's going to be fallout. Legal battles, probably. Your family will likely get pulled into it since your father was planning to do business with Marcus. You should be prepared for that. Victoria had stopped being able to prepare for anything. Will they come after me? Legally? Maybe. Marcus might try to claim you stole documents or violated some confidentiality agreement. It won't stick. You didn't take anything, but he might try anyway out of spite. Great. I have lawyers on retainer, good ones. If it comes to that, they'll handle it. Why? Victoria turned to look at him directly. Why are you doing all this? The lawyers, the safe houses, the evidence against Marcus. You said revenge, but that's not enough. There's something else. Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, My father died of a heart attack at his desk. Working, making deals, destroying someone's company right up until the end. His voice stayed level, but something underneath it wasn't. And you know what happened at his funeral? People praised him, talked about his business acumen, his strategic genius, his legacy. Nobody mentioned the lives he ruined, the families he broke, the people who lost everything because he saw opportunity in their desperation. Igishu, you mentioned Amanda before. Amanda was the final straw, but she wasn't the first person I failed to help. Nathaniel looked at his hands. When I was 25, my father partnered with a man named Richard Chen. Small tech company, good product, but Chen made some bad investments and needed capital. My father offered to help, in exchange for majority control. Victoria could see where this was going. Chen signed the deal because he didn't have another choice. Within 6 months, my father had gutted the company, sold the patents, and liquidated the assets. Chen lost everything, his business, his savings, his marriage. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. He killed himself a year later, left behind 2 kids. That wasn't your fault. I knew what my father was planning. I saw the contracts. I could have warned Chen, could have told him to walk away, could have done something. Nathaniel finally looked at her. I did nothing, because I was 25 and scared and didn't want to go against my father. And a man died because of my cowardice. The confession hung between them. So this is penance, Victoria said quietly. This is me trying to live with what I didn't do then by doing something now. He stood, brushing off his jeans. You asked for the truth. That's it. I help people like you because I didn't help people like Chen. It doesn't balance the scales, but it's something. Victoria didn't know what to say to that, didn't know how to process the weight of someone else's guilt alongside her own. So she just nodded and looked back at her camera, at the photos of trees and light that didn't require words. They went inside as darkness settled fully. Nathaniel made dinner from the canned supplies, pasta with sauce that came from a jar, garlic bread from the freezer. It was simple and warm, and somehow exactly what Victoria needed. Tell me about your photography, Nathaniel said while they ate. What draws you to it? Victoria thought about it. Control, mostly. In real life, things happen to you. People make decisions that affect you. You're always reacting, adjusting, trying to manage chaos. She paused. But with photography, you choose everything. The angle, the focus, the moment. You decide what matters and what doesn't. It's the only place I've ever felt like I had complete control over anything. Is that why Marcus hated it? Probably. He couldn't control what I saw through the lens. Couldn't manage how I framed things. Victoria stabbed at her pasta. He tried, though. Told me I was wasting time. That I should focus on things that mattered. His things, his priorities, his vision of what our life should look like. And you listened. I listened because it was easier than fighting. Because every time I pushed back, he pushed harder. Because I was tired and scared and convinced that compromise would eventually lead to peace. She set down her fork. But compromise with someone like Marcus isn't compromise, it's just surrender in slow motion. When did you realize that? The day I fainted, when I woke up in that office and you looked at me like you could see every lie I'd been telling myself. Victoria met his eyes. You were the first person who didn't try to convince me I was wrong about what I was feeling. You just said it out loud, that I didn't have to do this, and something in me broke. Or maybe it was something that finally got put back together. I'm still not sure which. Nathaniel held her gaze. Both, probably. Breaking and healing aren't always different things. They finished eating in comfortable silence. Victoria helped clean up, then retreated to the bedroom Nathaniel had indicated was hers. It was small, plain, with a bed that looked like it had never been used. She lay down in her borrowed clothes and stared at the ceiling, listening to Nathaniel move around in other parts of the house. Her phone buzzed. Claire again. I'm so sorry. Dad made me. I didn't want to, but he said if I didn't help find you, he'd cut me off too. I'm so sorry. Victoria stared at the message for a long time. She wanted to be angry, wanted to feel betrayed, but mostly she just felt sad. Claire had never learned to stand against their father's pressure. She'd always chosen survival over solidarity, and Victoria couldn't really blame her for that. She'd done the same thing for years with Marcus. She typed back, I know. It's okay. Stay safe. Then she deleted Claire's number from the phone. Not out of anger, but necessity. Her sister couldn't be trusted with information she couldn't protect, and Victoria couldn't afford another vulnerability. Sleep came in pieces. She'd doze for 30 minutes, wake with her heart racing, check the windows, then try again. Every sound felt like threat. Every shadow looked like Marcus materializing out of the darkness with that controlled smile and his promises about loyalty and consequences. Around 3 in the morning, she gave up and went downstairs. Nathaniel was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open and paperwork spread across the surface. He looked up when she appeared. Can't sleep? Every time I close my eyes, I see him. Victoria sat down across from him. What are you working on? Final review before everything goes live, making sure every fact is airtight, every source protected. He gestured to the papers. This is years of documentation. Phone records, bank statements, witness testimonies, security footage. It's not just about Marcus anymore. It's about the entire system that protected him. His lawyers, his accountants, the people who looked the other way while he operated. Victoria picked up one of the documents, a bank statement showing transfers that looked deliberately obscured. You really think this will stop him? I think this will destroy him. Nathaniel closed the laptop. But you're not asking if it'll work. You're asking if it'll keep you safe. Will it? Nothing keeps anyone completely safe, but it'll make you a lot less interesting as a target. Marcus needs power to be dangerous. Take that away and he's just another criminal facing consequences. I want to see him face consequences. The admission came out harsher than Victoria intended. I want him to feel even a fraction of what he made me feel. Trapped, powerless, afraid. He will, starting in about 3 hours. Victoria looked at the clock. 3:45. In just over 2 hours, the world would know what Marcus Holloway really was. Her parents would have to face the reality of who they'd tried to force her to marry. Claire would understand why Victoria couldn't come back. Everyone who judged her for running would see what she'd been running from. I should feel satisfied, she said. But I just feel empty. That's normal. Revenge doesn't fill holes, it just stops the bleeding. Nathaniel started gathering papers, organizing them back into folders. What comes after is the hard part, figuring out who you are when you're not defined by what was done to you. And if I don't know who that is, then you figure it out. Try things, fail at some, succeed at others. Build something new from scratch. He paused. That's what I did after my father died. Spent 2 years just trying different things, seeing what felt right without his expectations weighing on every choice. What did you discover? That I'm good at finding information people want hidden, that I like helping people who can't help themselves, that I sleep better at night when I'm working against corruption instead of benefiting from it. He smiled slightly. And that I'm terrible at cooking anything that doesn't come from a can or a takeout container. Victoria almost laughed. I noticed that. It's a character flaw I'm comfortable with. They sat together as the clock ticked toward dawn. Nathaniel worked through the last of his documentation. Victoria scrolled through the photos on her camera, deleting the bad ones and flagging the few that might be worth keeping. At 5:30, Nathaniel's phone started buzzing. It's starting, he said, reading messages as they came in. Financial Times posted early. The others will follow. Victoria felt her stomach clench. That's it then. That's it. She stood and moved to the window, watching the sky lighten through the trees. Somewhere in the city, Marcus was probably just waking up, maybe checking his phone, maybe seeing the notifications, maybe feeling his carefully constructed world begin to crack. Victoria hoped it hurt. At 6:15, Nathaniel's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his expression shifted into something that looked like satisfaction. Understood. Thank you. He hung up. Marcus's accounts have been frozen pending investigation. Federal prosecutors are reviewing the financial crimes evidence, and there's already a warrant being drafted for his arrest on the assault charges. Victoria turned from the window. How long? 24 hours, maybe less. Nathaniel set down his phone. It's over, Victoria. He's done. She wanted to believe that, wanted to feel the relief those words should bring, but all she could think about was Marcus's voice on the phone yesterday. I always find what I'm looking for, and the certainty in his threat. He's not going to just accept this, she said. He doesn't have a choice. He'll come after me. Before they arrest him, while he still can. He'll want... She stopped, the thought too terrible to finish. He'll want revenge, Nathaniel finished. I know. That's why we're staying here until he's in custody. And if he finds us first? Nathaniel crossed to a cabinet Victoria hadn't noticed before, unlocked it, and pulled out something she hadn't expected. A gun. Then I make sure he doesn't leave, he said quietly. Victoria stared at the weapon. You said you weren't here to rescue me. I'm not. I'm here to make sure you survive long enough to rescue yourself. He checked the gun with practiced efficiency, then set it on the table between them. I don't want to use this, but if Marcus shows up here, if he tries to hurt you, I will, without hesitation. The certainty in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it felt like the first solid ground she'd stood on in days. Okay, she said. They spent the day in tense waiting. Nathaniel monitored news coverage on his laptop. The story was spreading faster than even he'd anticipated, with major outlets picking it up and adding their own investigations. Marcus's face was everywhere, alongside headlines about fraud, assault, abuse. His lawyers released a statement denying everything and threatening lawsuits. His father's old business partners started distancing themselves publicly. Victoria tried to focus on her photography, scrolling through images and making notes about editing, but her attention kept drifting. Every car sound from the distant road made her tense. Every unfamiliar noise put her on alert. Around 3 o'clock, Nathaniel's phone rang again. They're bringing him in, he said after hanging up. Voluntary surrender. His lawyers negotiated it. So he's in custody? Will be within the hour. Victoria felt something in her chest finally loosen. It's really over. The immediate threat is over. The rest, the trial, the fallout, all of it. That'll take time. Nathaniel closed his laptop. But yes, you're safe now. Safe. The word felt foreign. Victoria had spent so long living in various states of danger that safety didn't have a shape she recognized. It felt hollow, temporary, like something that could disappear the moment she trusted it. What happens now? She asked. Now you decide what your life looks like. You can stay here as long as you need, or I can help you find an apartment, get you set up somewhere new, whatever you want. I don't know what I want. Then take time to figure it out. There's no rush. But there was a rush, at least in Victoria's mind. She'd been living in borrowed spaces with borrowed things, dependent on Nathaniel's charity and protection. She needed to stand on her own, needed to prove to herself more than anyone that she could exist without someone else holding her up. The gallery you mentioned, she said. Can you still make that introduction? Nathaniel smiled. I'll call her tomorrow. That night, Victoria actually slept. 8 hours of dreamless black that felt like falling into safety and staying there. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through the window and she could hear Nathaniel moving around downstairs. She checked her phone. Still no messages from her family, which was somehow worse than if they'd been angry. Radio silence meant they'd made their choice. And it wasn't her. The burner phone had one new message, but not from Claire, from a number she didn't recognize. Congratulations. You won. Hope it was worth destroying everything we built together. Victoria stared at the text. Marcus, reaching out one last time from whatever cell or lawyer's office he was messaging from. One final attempt to make her feel guilty, to make this her fault. She deleted the message without responding. Downstairs, Nathaniel had made coffee and was burning toast. "Your culinary skills remain impressive," Victoria said, pouring herself coffee. "I have many talents. Cooking isn't one of them." He scraped the burnt parts into the trash. "I talked to the gallery owner this morning. She'll look at your work. Can you have a portfolio ready by Friday?" "That's 3 days." "Is that enough time?" Victoria thought about the photos she'd taken. Hundreds of them now, scattered across her camera's memory card. She'd need to cull them down, edit the best ones, arrange them into something cohesive. "It's enough," she said. "Good. Because she's interested. I might have talked you up." "You've never seen my work. I've seen your determination. That counts for more." Nathaniel handed her a plate with slightly less burnt toast. "Also, I looked into your bank accounts. Your father froze your access like we expected, but there's a trust from your grandmother. Do you know about it?" Victoria had forgotten. Her grandmother had died 3 years ago, leaving Victoria a modest trust that wouldn't mature until she was 28, but there were provisions for hardship withdrawals. "I can't access it yet. You can if you claim financial abandonment by your family, which, legally speaking, you can." Nathaniel pulled up something on his laptop. "It's not a fortune, but it's enough to get you started. Apartment, basic expenses, equipment. You wouldn't be dependent on anyone." The idea made Victoria's throat tight. Independence. Actual, real independence. "How do I do that?" she asked. "I have a lawyer who specializes in trust law. She can file the paperwork. Should take about 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 14 days between here and a future she could actually control." "Okay," Victoria said. "Let's do it." The next 3 days blurred together in focused work. Victoria went through every photo she'd taken, narrowing hundreds down to 50, then 30, then finally 20. That told a story. They weren't perfect. Technically, some were flawed, but they captured something true. Trees that looked like they were reaching. Shadows that suggested more than they showed. Light that made ordinary things feel significant. She titled the collection After, because she couldn't figure out what came before anymore, and it didn't matter. Friday came with gray skies and the threat of rain. Nathaniel drove her to the gallery, a small space in a town she'd never visited, run by a woman named Sarah Chen, who had kind eyes and graying hair. "Nathaniel said you were talented," Sarah said, looking through the portfolio Victoria had assembled. "He wasn't wrong." "Thank you. These are raw, unpolished in some ways, but there's honesty here. Pain, too, if I'm reading them right." Sarah looked up. "What were you trying to capture?" Victoria thought about it. "Survival. What it looks like to choose yourself even when it costs everything." Sarah nodded slowly. "I think a lot of people would connect with that, especially now." She closed the portfolio. "I have an exhibition opening in 6 weeks. Local artists, contemporary perspectives. There's space for one more contributor if you're interested." "I'm interested." "It's not paid. We don't do sales on site, but it's exposure. And exposure leads to opportunities." Sarah handed back the portfolio. "Think about it. Let me know by next week." Outside, Victoria stood on the sidewalk and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Possibility. Not happiness, not yet, but the space where happiness might eventually grow. "She liked them," Nathaniel said. "She did. You sound surprised." "I am. I thought I'd forgotten how to do this, how to create something that mattered." Victoria looked at him. "Thank you. For pushing me. For making me remember." "You didn't forget. You just weren't allowed to remember." He checked his phone. "Marcus's arraignment is Monday. They're expecting him to plead not guilty. Trial will probably take 6 months. Will I have to testify? Maybe, if they build a case around the abuse allegations, but that's a long way off." Nathaniel pocketed his phone. "The trust paperwork went through this morning. You have access to your grandmother's money as of today." Victoria felt the ground shift under her feet. Not collapsing this time, but solidifying. Real resources, real options, real independence. "I should find my own place," she said. "Stop imposing on you." "You're not imposing. I am. And I need to figure out how to live without someone else managing my safety." She said it gently. "You've done more than enough, more than I can ever repay, but I need to do the rest myself." Nathaniel looked like he wanted to argue, but he just nodded. Okay, but stay at the cabin until you find somewhere. No rush. They drove back through rain that started as mist and built to downpour. Victoria watched the landscape blur through the windshield and felt the weight of the last 2 weeks finally settle into something manageable. Marcus was facing justice. Her family had made their choice. She had money, a camera, and a gallery show in 6 weeks. She had a future. It wasn't the future she'd planned. It was smaller, uncertain, built on foundations that still felt shaky. But it was hers, entirely, completely hers. And that was enough. Victoria found an apartment 3 weeks later in a neighborhood she'd never lived in before, far enough from her old life that running into anyone from her past felt unlikely. It was small, 1 bedroom, galley kitchen, a living room that barely fit a couch. But it had good light and windows that faced east, which meant mornings were bright. She signed the lease with her grandmother's money and moved in with almost nothing. A bed, a table, 2 chairs, kitchen basics, the camera, and her growing collection of photography equipment. Everything fit in Nathaniel's car in a single trip. "You sure about this?" he asked, carrying the last box up the stairs. "The cabin's still available if you need more time." "I need to do this." Victoria set the box down in the middle of her empty living room. "Need to prove I can." "You don't have anything to prove." "I do, to myself." She looked around the bare space. "Thank you for everything. I wouldn't have survived without you." "Yes, you would have. Just maybe not as comfortably." Nathaniel handed her a business card, his, with his personal number written on the back. "You need anything, call. Doesn't matter what time." "I will." He left, and Victoria stood alone in her apartment, feeling the silence press against her like a physical thing. No one telling her what to do. No one managing her choices. No one hovering with concern or control or carefully disguised threats. Just her. It was terrifying. The gallery show opened 6 weeks later on a Friday evening. Victoria arrived early, watched Sarah hang her 20 photographs on the gallery wall, and felt her stomach twist with anxiety. The images looked different under gallery lighting, more exposed, more vulnerable, like she'd accidentally revealed something too personal. "They're good," Sarah said, stepping back to assess the arrangement. "People are going to respond to these." Victoria hoped so, hoped someone would see past the technical flaws to the truth underneath. The opening reception started at 7. 40 people showed up, more than Victoria expected, and moved through the gallery with wine glasses and quiet conversation. She stood to the side watching strangers look at her work and tried not to feel like she was being judged. A woman in her 50s stopped in front of the photo Victoria had titled "Break." Trees shot from below, their branches reaching toward light that barely broke through. The woman stood there for a long time. "This one," she said when Victoria approached. "It feels like struggle, like fighting toward something you can't quite reach." "That's exactly what it is," Victoria said. "I felt that way once. Bad marriage. Took me years to leave." The woman looked at her. "These photos, they're about leaving, aren't they?" "Yes." "Good for you." The woman moved on to the next image. More people came. Some lingered, some passed through quickly. A few asked about purchasing prints. Victoria gave them Sarah's contact information and tried not to feel overwhelmed by the reality that people actually wanted to pay for her work. Nathaniel showed up halfway through, looking uncomfortable in the crowd, but making the effort anyway. "You came," Victoria said. "You invited me. I'm not completely socially incompetent." He gestured at the walls. "These are incredible, Victoria. Seriously. You're biased." "I'm honest, there's a difference." He paused. "Your family didn't come." "I didn't invite them. Not even Claire. Especially not Claire." Victoria had deleted her sister's number weeks ago and hadn't regretted it. The betrayal had been unintentional, but it was still betrayal, and Victoria couldn't afford vulnerabilities anymore. This is separate from all that. New life, new work, new everything. "How's that working out?" "Some days are better than others." She was being honest. Some days she woke up feeling capable and independent. Other days the weight of what she'd lost, family, security, the illusion of a planned future, crushed her before she got out of bed. "But I'm managing." "That's more than managing. That's thriving." Victoria wanted to believe him. The show ran for 6 weeks. Victoria sold 12 prints and got 3 commission requests. One for a wedding, which she politely declined, and 2 for family portraits, which she accepted despite her inexperience. The money wasn't substantial, but it was earned, hers, untangled from anyone else's control or expectations. She threw herself into work, took photos constantly, experimented with different styles, built a website, started an Instagram account that gained followers slowly but steadily. She took the portrait commission seriously, spent hours with each family finding the right light and the right moments, and delivered images that made clients cry with recognition. One woman, looking at photos of her teenage daughter, said, "You made her look exactly like herself. Not prettier, not older, just completely, perfectly her." It was the best compliment Victoria had ever received. Marcus's trial started in November. Victoria was subpoenaed to testify about the abuse, along with Amanda and 2 other women who'd come forward after the article published. The prosecutor prepared her carefully, explaining what questions to expect, how to stay calm under cross-examination, how to remember that telling the truth was enough. "His lawyers are going to try to discredit you," the prosecutor warned. "They'll bring up the wedding, suggest you're bitter, imply you're lying for attention or revenge. Don't engage, just answer the questions directly." Victoria nodded, feeling sick. The testimony day came in early December. Victoria wore a simple dress, no makeup beyond minimal coverage because she wanted to look honest, and walked into the courtroom feeling like she was walking back into Marcus's trap. He sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, looking smaller than she remembered, diminished. When their eyes met, his expression stayed carefully neutral, but she saw the anger underneath. She took the stand, swore to tell the truth, and did. The prosecutor asked about the relationship, the escalating control, the violence. Victoria answered each question simply, factually, without embellishment. Yes, he hit her. Yes, he isolated her from friends. Yes, he threatened her when she tried to resist. Yes, she'd been afraid. Marcus's lawyer stood for cross-examination. He was older, silver-haired, with a voice designed to sound reasonable. "Miss Ashford, you called off your wedding very publicly, didn't you?" "Yes." "In front of 200 guests?" "Yes." "That must have been humiliating for Mr. Holloway." "I wasn't thinking about his humiliation. I was thinking about my survival." "But you're aware that immediately after you left, a damaging article about Mr. Holloway was published?" "Yes." "An article you helped facilitate? An article that exposed his criminal behavior?" "Yes." "So you admit you had motivation to paint Mr. Holloway in the worst possible light?" Victoria looked at Marcus, then back at the lawyer. "I didn't need to paint anything. I just told the truth about what he did to me." The lawyer tried several more approaches, suggesting she'd exaggerated, that she'd been unstable, that the relationship hadn't been as bad as she claimed. Victoria held her ground, refusing to be shaken, and eventually he gave up. She left the stand feeling hollowed out, but intact. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 2 days. The verdict came back guilty on 4 counts of assault, 2 counts of financial fraud, 1 count of witness intimidation. Marcus was sentenced to 8 years, with possibility of parole after 5. Victoria watched him being led away and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not relief, not closure. Just emptiness where fear used to live. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Victoria pushed through without comment. Nathaniel was waiting by his car. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know. Ask me tomorrow." He drove her home. She went upstairs to her apartment, closed the door, and finally allowed herself to fall apart. The tears came hard and ugly, months of held tension releasing all at once. She cried for the person she'd been before Marcus, for the family she'd lost, for the life she'd thought she wanted that turned out to be a trap. She cried until there was nothing left. Then she got up, washed her face, and made herself dinner. The next morning, she woke up feeling lighter. Winter passed. Victoria took more photos, booked more clients, slowly built a reputation as someone who captured honest moments instead of posed perfection. Her work started appearing in local magazines. She was invited to exhibit at a larger gallery in the city. The Instagram account crossed 5,000 followers. She was making it work. In February, Claire reached out. The message came through Instagram, a tentative comment on one of Victoria's photos, then a direct message asking if they could talk. Victoria stared at the message for 3 days before responding. They met at a coffee shop neither of them had history with. Claire looked thinner, older, worn down by whatever had happened in the 8 months since the wedding. "I'm sorry," Claire said immediately. For telling Dad about the phone number, for not being stronger, for everything. I know. I wanted to come to your gallery show, to the trial, but Dad said if I had any contact with you, I'd be choosing you over the family. Claire's hands wrapped around her coffee cup. I couldn't do it. I'm sorry. You made your choice. Victoria said it without anger. We all did. Mom asks about you sometimes. When Dad's not around, wonders if you're okay. I'm okay. Are you happy? Victoria thought about it. I'm building something. It's not happiness yet, but it's mine. That's enough for now. Claire nodded. Dad's business collapsed completely. He had to file bankruptcy. We moved to a smaller house. Mom's on more medication. Everything fell apart just like you said it would. I didn't make it fall apart. It was already broken. I just stopped holding it together. I know. I'm starting to understand that. Claire looked down. Can we try again? Being sisters? Victoria wanted to say yes. Wanted to rebuild that bridge, have family again, stop feeling so alone. But Claire had proven she couldn't be trusted when pressure came, and Victoria couldn't afford to depend on people who would fold. Maybe eventually, Victoria said carefully, but not yet. I need to be solid on my own first. Claire looked hurt but nodded. Okay, I understand. They finished their coffee making careful small talk, then hugged goodbye. Victoria watched her sister walk away and felt sad but not guilty. She'd chosen herself again, and this time it didn't feel like destruction. It felt like protection. Spring came with rain and new growth. Victoria's second gallery show opened in March, this one featuring portraits, her commission work alongside personal projects. The response was stronger than the first show. She sold more prints, booked more clients, started getting requests from small businesses for commercial work. She hired an accountant to help manage the money, started a retirement account, looked into health insurance that wasn't connected to her family, built the infrastructure of independence piece by careful piece. She was 27 years old and learning how to be an adult on her own terms. In April, Nathaniel called. There's something you should know, he said. Marcus made parole, early release for good behavior. Victoria's stomach dropped. When? Yesterday. He's out. Is he coming? No. Part of his parole conditions include a restraining order. He can't contact you, can't come within 500 feet. If he violates it, he goes straight back. Nathaniel paused. But I wanted you to know, just in case. Victoria thanked him and hung up, then sat very still trying to process what that information meant. Marcus was free. Somewhere in the world, moving through space, existing. The thought made her skin crawl. She checked her locks twice that night, kept her phone close, barely slept. 3 days passed without incident, then a week, then 2. Victoria started to relax. The knock on her door came on a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks after Marcus's release. Victoria looked through the peephole, expecting a neighbor or delivery person, and saw him instead. Marcus. Standing in her hallway, alone. Her blood went cold. Victoria. His voice came through the door, measured and calm. I just want to talk, 5 minutes, that's all. She should call the police, should call Nathaniel, should do anything except engage. But her phone was in the bedroom, and Marcus was blocking the only exit. You're violating your parole, she said through the door. I know, but I couldn't leave things how they were. I need you to understand. He stopped. Please. 5 minutes. Victoria's hand went to the deadbolt. Some old instinct, trained over months of trying to manage his moods, told her that refusing would make this worse, that if she just listened, gave him what he wanted, he'd leave. Then she caught herself. That instinct was the trap, the thing that had kept her submissive and scared, and she wasn't that person anymore. No, she said firmly. Leave. Now. Victoria, I said no. I don't owe you 5 minutes. I don't owe you anything. Her voice got stronger. You violated the restraining order. The police are coming. You need to leave. She pulled out her phone. She'd grabbed it from the bedroom the moment she saw him and dialed 911. Marcus must have heard her speaking to the operator because his voice changed, hardened. You can't just destroy someone's life and walk away, Victoria. That's not how this works. I didn't destroy your life. You did. I just stopped letting you destroy mine. She heard him hit the door, not hard enough to break it, just a frustrated impact. Then footsteps moving away. Victoria stayed on the line with the operator until police arrived 10 minutes later. She gave a statement, showed them the restraining order, explained about Marcus's release. They put out an alert, promised to increase patrols in her neighborhood, told her to call immediately if he came back. After they left, Victoria called Nathaniel. "He came here," she said when he answered. "I'm on my way." Nathaniel arrived 20 minutes later. Victoria let him in, locked the door behind him, and felt her hand start shaking with delayed reaction. "Tell me what happened," Nathaniel said. She told him. The knock, the conversation, the moment she'd almost opened the door before catching herself. "You did exactly right," Nathaniel said when she finished. "You set a boundary. You didn't engage. You called for help. That's perfect." "I almost opened the door," Victoria's voice cracked. "I almost fell right back into managing him, trying to keep him calm." "But you didn't. That's what matters. What if he comes back? What if next time you do the same thing? Set the boundary, call for help, refuse to engage." Nathaniel pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my security contact, getting cameras installed, and I'm staying here tonight, on the couch." "You don't have to set—" "Yes, I do, because you helped put Marcus away, and he's clearly not done being angry about it. So until he's back in custody, you're not staying alone." Victoria wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could handle this herself. But the truth was she was terrified, and having Nathaniel there made her feel safer. "Okay," she said quietly. "Thank you." They spent the evening in careful normalcy, takeout Thai food, mindless television, conversation about anything except Marcus. Nathaniel made up the couch around 11. Victoria went to her bedroom but didn't sleep, listening for sounds at the door. Around 3 a.m., she heard it. Not knocking this time. The sound of someone trying the doorknob, testing it. Victoria grabbed her phone, crept to the bedroom door and whispered, "Nathaniel." He was already up, moving toward the door with his phone in one hand. He'd heard it too. "Stay in your room," he said quietly. "What are you—" "Stay there." The doorknob rattled harder. Then there was a different sound, something scraping at the lock. He was trying to break in. Nathaniel dialed 911, spoke in a low, urgent voice. Victoria heard sirens in the distance, getting closer. The sound at the door stopped. Footsteps running. By the time police arrived, Marcus was gone. But he'd left evidence. Scratches on the lock, a crowbar discarded in the hallway, security camera footage showing him approaching the door. The police put out an arrest warrant. Nathaniel called his security contact at 4 in the morning. By dawn, Victoria's apartment had cameras installed at every entry point, and Nathaniel had made it clear he wasn't leaving until Marcus was caught. The arrest came 2 days later. Marcus had tried to board a flight to Mexico using a fake passport. Federal charges were added: violation of parole, attempted breaking and entering, flight to avoid prosecution. This time, the judge denied bail. "He'll get another 5 years minimum," Nathaniel said after the hearing. "Possibly more. And there won't be early parole this time." Victoria nodded, feeling numb. "You're safe now," Nathaniel added. "Really safe." She wanted to believe him, wanted to feel relief, but mostly she just felt tired. Tired of being afraid, tired of looking over her shoulder, tired of Marcus Holloway taking up space in her life, even when he wasn't physically present. "I want to stop thinking about him," she said. "Stop having him be the center of everything." "Then make him not be." Nathaniel said it simply. "Keep building your business. Keep making art. Keep living. Eventually, he'll just be something that happened to you, not something that defines you." Victoria looked at him. Over the past 9 months, Nathaniel had become her anchor, the one person who'd helped without trying to control, who'd supported without demanding anything in return. She trusted him in a way she hadn't trusted anyone in years. "Why did you really help me?" she asked. "And don't say penance. I need the real answer." Nathaniel considered that for a long moment. "Because you reminded me of someone I couldn't help. And because somewhere along the way, helping you stopped being about my guilt and started being about wanting you to be okay. Is that all?" "No." He met her eyes. "Somewhere along the way, I also started caring about you. Not as a project or a person who needed saving, but just as you. Victoria. The person who takes incredible photos and makes terrible jokes and refuses to quit even when everything's falling apart." The confession hung between them. "I care about you too," Victoria said quietly. But I'm not ready for, I don't know what I'm ready for. I'm still figuring out how to be alone.
I know, and I'm not asking for anything. Nathaniel stood, giving her space. I just wanted you to know. So there's no confusion about why I'm still here. Victoria appreciated the honesty, appreciated that he wasn't pushing, wasn't demanding, was just existing beside her while she figured out who she was. Will you stay friends with me? She asked, while I figure things out. Yes? Even if it takes a long time? However long you need. It was the right answer. Summer came. Victoria's business grew. She hired an assistant to handle scheduling and social media. Rented a small studio space for client meetings. Started teaching beginner photography classes on weekends. Her life filled up with work and purpose and the slow, steady building of something sustainable. She went on a few dates, men she met through friends, through classes, through normal human interaction. None of them turned into anything serious, and that was okay. She wasn't looking for serious. She was looking for proof that she could navigate relationships without losing herself. Nathaniel stayed close, but not too close. They had dinner once a week. He came to her gallery shows. She asked his advice on business decisions, and he gave it without trying to make the decisions for her. It was the healthiest relationship Victoria had ever had, even though it wasn't romantic. In October, on the anniversary of the wedding that never happened, Victoria stood in her studio surrounded by her work and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Pride. She'd built this. Alone. With help, yes, but the choices had been hers. The work was hers. The success, however modest, belonged to no one but her. Her phone rang. Nathaniel. You busy? He asked. Not particularly. Why? I'm outside with Thai food and a bottle of wine. Thought you might want to commemorate the day you chose yourself. Victoria smiled. Come up. They ate on her couch. The food spread across her coffee table and talked about everything except Marcus. Eventually, the conversation drifted to the future. What do you want? Nathaniel asked. 5 years from now. What does your life look like? Victoria thought about it. A year ago, she wouldn't have been able to answer. Now she could see it clearly. I want a bigger studio, an established client base, maybe some published work in national magazines. She paused. I want to stop being afraid. I want to feel safe in my own life. You're not afraid now. Not of Marcus anymore, but of other things. Of depending on someone and losing myself again. Of trusting the wrong person. Of making the same mistakes. Those are reasonable fears. Are they? Sure, but fear doesn't have to control you. You can be afraid and still move forward. Nathaniel refilled her wine. That's what you've been doing for a year now. Moving forward, scared. He was right. Every step she'd taken since the wedding had been terrified. Leaving Marcus, hiding, testifying, building a business, learning to exist independently. She'd been scared the entire time and done it anyway. What about you? She asked. What do you want 5 years from now? Nathaniel looked at her and something in his expression shifted. Honestly, I'd like to still be in your life. However that looks. Friend, partner, whatever you're comfortable with. I just don't want to lose you. Victoria felt her chest tighten. Over the past year, Nathaniel had become essential. The person she called when things went wrong. The one who showed up without being asked. The man who'd helped her escape without trying to own her rescue. She'd been holding him at arm's length because she wasn't ready, wasn't sure, wasn't healed. But maybe healing wasn't about being perfect before you let someone in. Maybe it was about letting someone in and trusting yourself to stay whole anyway. I'd like that too, she said quietly. You being in my life. Just in your life? For now. But maybe someday more than that. She met his eyes. If you're willing to wait. I've been waiting a year already. I can wait longer. It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't a commitment or a promise. It was just two people acknowledging possibility and agreeing not to rush it. It was enough. The months that followed were careful and good. Nathaniel stayed patient. Victoria stayed honest about what she could and couldn't handle. They went on actual dates, dinner, movies, walks through the city. But Victoria still went home to her own apartment after, still needed space to be alone with her thoughts. She was learning that love didn't have to mean losing yourself, that partnership could exist without possession, that someone could care about you and still let you choose your own path.
It was a slow education, but she was a dedicated student. By the time Marcus's second sentencing came in January, 8 additional years, no possibility of early parole, Victoria barely registered it. He'd become background noise, a chapter that was closed and filed away. She attended the hearing because the prosecutor asked her to, but she didn't feel the need to make a statement or see his face. He was simply over. Spring came again. Victoria's business hit a milestone. 50 clients in a single month, more revenue than she'd imagined possible a year ago. She celebrated by upgrading her camera equipment and taking herself on a solo trip to the coast, where she spent a week photographing ocean and sky and the endless meeting of water and horizon. One evening on that trip, sitting on the beach as the sun set, she realized she hadn't thought about Marcus in 3 days, hadn't checked her locks obsessively, hadn't jumped at unexpected sounds. She was just Victoria Ashford, photographer, sitting on a beach because she wanted to. The woman who'd collapsed at the altar felt like someone else entirely. A previous version, necessary but outgrown. She'd been afraid and dependent and convinced she had no options. The woman on the beach knew better. When she got back to the city, Nathaniel picked her up from the train station. "Good trip?" he asked. "Really good." "You look different." "How?" "Lighter, like you left something behind."
I think I did. Victoria leaned over and kissed him, quick and sure, a choice made without fear. "I'm ready now. If you still want, I'm ready." Nathaniel smiled. "Still want." They took it slow anyway. Victoria moved into Nathaniel's place 6 months later, but kept her apartment as studio space. They talked about marriage eventually, but agreed there was no rush. They'd both seen what happened when people rushed into commitments they weren't ready for.
Victoria's business kept growing. She published her first photo essay in a national magazine, exhibited in New York, started mentoring young photographers who reminded her of who she'd been, talented but beaten down, convinced their art didn't matter. She told them it did. Told them their vision was worth protecting. Told them that choosing themselves wasn't selfish, it was survival. Some of them listened. On the 3rd anniversary of the wedding that never happened, Victoria stood in the gallery where her latest show was opening and looked at the photos on the walls. They tracked 3 years of growth, from the raw, frightened images of trees reaching for light, to portraits full of complicated humanity, to her current work capturing moments of quiet strength. The title of the show was After the Fall, because that's what all of it had been. The fall from everything she'd known, and what came after. The rebuilding, the reclaiming, the slow assembly of a life worth living. Nathaniel appeared beside her, handed her a glass of champagne. "To falling," he said, raising his glass. "And landing," Victoria added. They drank to that. People filtered into the gallery. Strangers who'd become clients, clients who'd become friends. A community built on honest work and authentic connection. Claire was there too. They'd reconciled slowly over the past year, rebuilding trust in small, careful increments. Her parents weren't there, had never acknowledged Victoria's success or apologized for their role in nearly destroying her. Victoria had made peace with that absence. Some relationships didn't survive truth. That was okay. Sarah Chen, the gallery owner who'd given Victoria her first show, approached with a man Victoria didn't recognize. "Victoria, this is James Park. He's a curator at the Contemporary Museum downtown. He's been following your work." "It's extraordinary," James said, shaking her hand. "Raw and honest in a way most contemporary photography isn't. I'd love to discuss a solo exhibition for next year." Victoria felt her breath catch. The Contemporary Museum. A solo show. The kind of opportunity she'd stopped dreaming about when Marcus told her photography was a waste of time. "I'd love that," she managed. James handed her his card. "Call me next week. We'll discuss details." After he left, Victoria turned to Nathaniel, stunned. "Did that just happen?" "It did. A solo show at the Contemporary. Told you that you were talented." Nathaniel kissed her forehead. "Also told you that choosing yourself would lead somewhere good." He'd been right. Not that the path had been easy or smooth, it hadn't been. There had been months of therapy to process the trauma. Panic attacks that came from nowhere. Moments when the weight of independence felt crushing instead of liberating. Days when she wanted to quit photography, quit everything, just hide from the difficulty of building something from nothing. But she hadn't quit. She'd kept going, kept shooting, kept showing up to her own life even when it felt impossible. And slowly, gradually, The life she'd built became more solid than the one she'd escaped. That night, after the gallery closed and the guests left, Victoria and Nathaniel walked home through the city. It was late spring, the air warm and full of possibility. "You happy?" Nathaniel asked. Victoria thought about the question. Happiness still felt complicated, layered with things she'd lost, scarred by things she'd survived. But underneath all that was something solid and real.
"Yes," she said. "I'm happy." "Good." They walked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Victoria said, "Thank you for everything, for helping me when I couldn't help myself." "You helped yourself. I just made sure you survived long enough to figure out how. Still, thank you." Nathaniel squeezed her hand. "You're welcome." They reached their building. Nathaniel unlocked the door and held it open. Victoria stepped inside into the life she'd built, the future she'd chosen, the version of herself she'd fought to become. Behind her, the past sat quiet and distant. Ahead, everything was still being written. She'd collapsed at an altar 3 years ago, makeup running and secrets exposed, and thought her life was ending. She'd been wrong. It wasn't ending. It was just beginning in a way she'd never imagined, messy and difficult and entirely, completely hers. And that, she'd learned, was worth every hard thing it took to get here. The woman who'd stood at that altar, terrified and trapped, barely recognized the woman she'd become. The photographer with a growing reputation, the person who'd learned to set boundaries and enforce them, the survivor who'd transformed her escape into art. She'd learned that choosing yourself wasn't selfish, that protecting yourself wasn't cruel, that sometimes love meant walking away from everyone who couldn't love you right. She'd learned that falling apart wasn't the same as failing, that breaking could be the beginning of rebuilding, that the life that came after disaster could be better than the life that came before, if you were brave enough to build it. Most importantly, she'd learned that she didn't need rescuing. She needed permission to rescue herself. And once she had it, once she gave it to herself, everything else followed. The past would always be there, would always be part of her story. But it didn't define her ending. She did, and she was writing herself free.